In this RGT video, I'm going to be talking about the latest information from Capcom regarding Resident Evil 6, along with mixing my own opinions. This is the latest as of February 15th, 2012. First thing I'll point out is that Capcom have stated that Leon's new partner is indeed Helena Harper. She's been tasked protecting the president. She didn't seem to do a particularly bang-up job of it, judging by the official trailer, in which we saw what many assumed to be President Graham. This has been now confirmed to be wrong, and it's actually the successor to President Graham. This is leading many to assume that the blonde that you continuously saw throughout the trailer is not actually, in fact, Ashley Graham, but is in fact Sherry Birkin, who is of course last seen from Resident Evil 2, and of course was William Birkin's daughter. Now William Birkin of course was the creator of the G virus, which was the virus which pretty much spread out and destroyed Raccoon City, and he subsequently injected himself with the virus when he was being hunted for it. In the end, of course, you had to destroy William because he was hell-bent on chasing his own daughter and you throughout the entire game. So it's going to be nice to see Sherry in a slightly less useless state. As far as I'm aware, there's been no actual news on her since the events of Resident Evil 2, at least not officially. There's been, the odd whispers here and there, but certainly nothing resembling the games or anything particularly concrete. Meanwhile, Chris is going to be in China. Apparently he's going to be in a fictional Chinese village, apparently recovering from personal trauma, whatever that means. Now, Chris is one of my favourite characters in the series, and I actually prefer him even to Leon, which, has some debate among fans whether, Leon from RE2 or Chris from RE1 is the better character, but I've always backed Chris because, he's the original. So anyway, we'll have to see what they're actually referring to there. They have mentioned, however, that a third playable character is going to be a mercenary, and he's going to be in a bloody conflict in Eastern Europe. Apparently there's going to be many mutants running around wild on the streets. Apparently they're trying to appeal to a younger audience with this guy. What that exactly means, I'm not sure, but I can only assume that he's going to be a younger, cooler looking character, maybe to say Chris or Leon. Obviously Chris, for example, is probably in his mid-30s by now, a pure assumption. So we'll have to see what's going to be taking place exactly on that guy's storyline. There's been no details of his name, and they haven't even announced whether he's going to, be a good guy or a bad guy, so to speak. As far as I'm aware, there's also, of course, been no pictures or drawings or any artwork of him. Indeed, I'm actually saying him, but for all I know, it could actually be a female. There's been actually nothing confirmed, as far as I'm aware, that's saying it's specifically him. It's just, many people are assuming it's him. Next of all, there's been a confirmed new zombie, or at least a mutation of one. I believe the pronouncing is Giavor, and it's been described as incredibly aggressive, which is always not what you want from a zombie. The last really aggressive zombie type that we kind of saw was probably the Crimson Heads from Resident Evil 1 Remake. They were a severe pain in the buttocks. Of course, everything since then hasn't been a zombie in a traditional sense. The villagers I don't really classify as zombies as such, from say Resident Evil 4 or even Resident Evil 5. So we'll have to see exactly what I mean by incredibly aggressive, but they have mentioned that it can sustain serious damage, and its limbs, even if they're severely deformed or destroyed with gunfire, can regenerate or mutate into various forms. For example, I'm assuming that, say, if you're long range, that means that you'll be able to enjoy the thought of having tentacles flying at you, and if you're shorter range than, say, spear type weapons being shoved into your face. Basically, the driving force behind this is to make you constantly rethink your approach. Now, obviously, this could be extremely frustrating if the control scheme wasn't up to scratch. Throughout Resident Evil's history, you've never been able to move and shoot simultaneously, unless you're talking about, turning left and right while actually aiming. this is no longer the case, and Capcom have finally stated that you can actually move and shoot simultaneously, which is something I did notice in the original DB trailer, as well as some other people did as well. You'll also be able to slide to cover, and you'll also be able to dodge, and even melee will be significantly expanded upon. This is quite interesting to me. It seems like they're basically importing many third-person type of controls from, say, Uncharted or Gears of War. What they exactly mean by melee will be significantly expanded upon is completely down to debate. I don't exactly know if they're going to be using a chainsaw against a zombie, and frankly I'm not sure if that's exactly Resident Evil's forte, but it will be nice to actually see it. So we'll have to see what Capcom does. It could be very cool if implemented correctly, but I'm going to reserve judgment until I actually see specific examples of this. For example, a combat trailer or something similar. It also apparently takes place 15 years after the events of the original Resident Evil game, which means it takes place a year from now, actually, 2013, which is quite a long time into the future from the original Resident Evil, but then it makes sense. The Resident Evil storylines always run roughly concurrently with what's going on in terms of, you know, our own timeline. So, for example, if it's 1999, it's usually 1999, the Resident Evil storyline, generally speaking. Finally, the game is apparently around the halfway mark in terms of completion. It does feature as well quick turn controls and almost 180 degrees, which isn't specifically new to Resident Evil 6. Other games have actually enjoyed those before, and of course it means that, you know, movement, specifically in those older games, was a lot less painful because the controls were somewhat clunky. It appears that Resident Evil 6 is not going for the sheer panic because you can't, you know, see what you're doing correctly approach any longer. But what exactly they're, you know, how exactly those controls are going to be implemented and then affect the gameplay is somewhat foreign to me. In fact, it's going to be one of the more interesting aspects of the game. The fact that they're pretty much redesigning the controls. The last major redesign of the controls was, of course, Resident Evil 4, which broke away completely from the mould of, say, Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 in terms of how the game actually played. If you ever played the Wii version of the game, it pretty much made the game that much more interesting because, of course, you had the Wiimote in addition to the standard controller. And it was also similar for the PC. The mouse made aiming less of a chore. In fact, I actually prefer the PC version somewhat because I prefer the preciseness of a mouse, you know, controller, but that's just me personally. Now, the game's also scheduled to be released on PS3, 360 and PC by the end of this year. If you've ever seen the trailer, and if not, I imagine pretty much everyone has by now, but if you haven't, then, you know, please do some searching. It's definitely worth watching. In fact, on my channel I actually have an analysis of it. But the graphics are definitely much improved. They haven't mentioned whether the trailers are from the PS3 version or, you know, for example, the PC version. So we don't know if we're going to be seeing the best graphics possible in the trailers. If it's, for example, the 360 version, it'll be very interesting to see what the PC version actually does look like. Now, with all that said, I think I've just about covered everything. So please leave your comments below, and I'll keep you apprised of any further developments. Take care and goodbye.